Switzerland has a strong financial system and is one of the 3 countries with the highest GDP per capita in Europe. However, life there does not unfold in the way many people imagine. When thinking of a wealthy nation, we often picture massive cities, towering buildings, and relentless movement. But here, prosperity is not expressed through extravagance. It comes from a rare sense of ease that nature offers to human life. Switzerland's landscape is shaped by the Alps, vast lakes, and deep valleys where mountains, water, villages, and cities coexist within a rare structure of order and calm. Small villages line mountain slopes and lake shores, kept at a scale that preserves the scenery, while rivers and lakes form the lifelines of communities, guiding movement, daily life, and seasonal rhythm. In this journey, we invite you to explore Switzerland, not only through its modern cities, but through its majestic nature, the quiet of everyday life, and landscapes and villages you may have never seen before. We hope this film offers you a new perspective on Switzerland, a place truly worth experiencing. And welcome to Switzerland. Switzerland is a country located in the heart of Europe, covering an area of roughly 41,290 square kilometers. Within this limited space, a distinctive system has taken shape, where every decision is constrained by geography, history, and strict control. The country is home to around 8.9 million people, with a relatively high population density for its size. Most residents cluster along urban corridors and lower valleys, while high alpine regions remain sparsely populated and largely untouched. Economically, Switzerland ranks among the world's most advanced economies. Its gross domestic product exceeds $900 billion, while per capita income remains among the highest globally, reflecting high productivity and long-term stability. Rather than relying on scale or military power, Switzerland's economy is built on sectors demanding extreme precision: finance, pharmaceuticals, advanced machinery, and watchmaking. These industries do not require rapid expansion, but depend on discipline, reliability, and strict standards. Social indicators reflect the same philosophy: low unemployment, strong social security systems, and high living standards reveal a model that prioritizes balance over growth at any cost. Together, these elements point to a clear conclusion. Switzerland does not seek to be the strongest, but the most precise. And it is this choice that sets the country apart from everywhere else. Switzerland was not born from an empire or a dynasty. It began as a small defensive alliance in 1291, when 3 mountain communities signed a pact to resist external control. This early confederation had no king, no dominant capital, and no expansionist ambition. Its sole objective was autonomy and survival within a region surrounded by larger powers. For centuries, Switzerland existed as a loose collection of self-governing cantons bound by mutual defense. In 1648, following the Peace of Westphalia, Swiss independence was formally recognized by European powers. The next defining decision came after Europe's wars. At the Congress of Vienna in 1915, Switzerland was recognized as a permanently neutral state, committed to non-participation and territorial non-use for warfare. From that point on, Switzerland avoided participation in major European conflicts, including the First World War and the Second World War. Neutrality became a survival strategy, not a political slogan. Geography functioned as natural armor. Roughly 60% of Swiss territory is mountainous, composed of narrow valleys, high passes, and limited access routes, making invasions slow, costly, and risky. Rather than building power to attack, Switzerland built systems to avoid becoming a target. Its history is defined not by military victories, but by staying outside conflict. These choices formed the foundation of modern Switzerland, a small, stable country, enduring among great powers through caution, consensus, and deliberate limitation. The journey opens at Switzerland's western edge, where the country meets the world, not through hard borders, but through dialogue. Geneva sits along Lake Geneva, directly beside France, open enough to connect, distant enough to remain untouched. The city hosts over 200 international organizations, including the European headquarters of the United Nations and the Red Cross. Yet Geneva does not dominate these spaces. It provides the stability required for coexistence. With a population of roughly 200,000, Geneva is not a large city. Its compact scale becomes an advantage. Movement is controlled, space is measured, and excess has no room to exist. Around 40% of Geneva's population consists of foreign residents, making it one of Europe's most international cities. Yet diversity here is not chaotic. It is tightly structured, reflecting Switzerland's approach to managing difference. Geneva's space feels deliberately controlled. The lake is vast yet restrained, the waterfront clean and measured, the streets open, but never chaotic. This is not a city that expands endlessly. It stops exactly where it should. This restraint is precisely what makes Geneva suitable for global decisions. There is no visual pressure, no sense of domination. Dialogue unfolds in an environment designed to reduce tension, not amplify it. Geneva does not resemble a capital of force. It does not rely on monumental symbols or imposing architecture. Its value lies in its ability to keep everything within control, space, tempo, and international role alike. Here, neutrality is not a political statement. It is an operational condition. It is felt through spatial order, functional balance, and carefully maintained distance between interests. Geneva sets the foundation for the journey ahead. It reveals that Switzerland's difference does not come from confrontation, but from choosing precisely where to stand still. From Geneva, the story does not end with dialogue. It expands into the political structure behind it. What happens here is not an exception, but a condensed expression of how Switzerland operates power. Switzerland is a federal state, made up of 26 cantons, each holding strong autonomy over taxation, education, and local law. Power is not centralized, but deliberately distributed, minimizing risk while maximizing stability. The country has upheld armed neutrality continuously since 1815, remaining outside NATO and avoiding alignment with military blocs. Neutrality here is not passive. It is a strategic choice, sustained across generations. A defining feature of this system is direct democracy. Swiss citizens participate in an average of 3 to 4 national referendums per year, voting directly on issues ranging from social policy to international agreements. Power is constantly audited from below. This structure produces a rare paradox. Switzerland holds global influence without intervention, maintains defense without display. Power is kept at a calibrated level, precise, stable, and resistant to disruption. Switzerland's political system is not designed for rapid reaction, but for avoiding irreversible mistakes. Decisions move through multiple layers of control not due to indecision, but because caution is valued above speed. Within this structure, conflict rarely escalates into crisis. It is slowed down, fragmented, and addressed piece by piece. Instead of direct confrontation, the system forces gradual adjustment until compromise becomes unavoidable. Swiss neutrality is therefore not about disengagement, but about maintaining distance from the gravitational pull of major powers. The country does not choose sides. It chooses position. Power in Switzerland does not accumulate around individuals or parties. It is distributed, constrained, and always reversible through the ballot. Stability comes from the ability to correct, not from permanence. For this reason, the system may appear slow, but it is remarkably difficult to destabilize. While other nations pursue strength through dominance, Switzerland protects itself through structure precise, consistent, and without excess. When international debates fade, Swiss power does not disappear, it contracts. BERN emerges not as a display of authority, but as a place where power is kept at its minimum effective state. BERN became Switzerland's federal capital in 1848, not due to size or economic dominance, but because of its neutral position between German and French-speaking regions. The choice was designed to prevent any single center from dominating. Switzerland's Federal Assembly in Bern operates under deep decentralization. There is no all-powerful president, and major decisions often require nationwide referendums. Power here is deliberately fragmented to prevent accumulation. With a population of roughly 130,000, Bern is far smaller than most European capitals. This scale is not a limitation, but a condition that allows politics to move slowly, deliberately, and with limited reactionary pressure. Bern's architecture and urban space reflect this philosophy. There are no towering headquarters or grand symbols of authority. Power here does not need to be seen. It only needs to function. Bern does not move like a typical capital. There is no urgency, no constant pull toward centers of power. Life unfolds evenly, slowly, and with order, as if politics exists only as background, not focus. Bern's Old Town, preserved almost intact, is not staged for visitors, but used daily by locals. Shops, cafes, libraries, and public spaces coexist within the same rhythm of life. The Air River functions as a shared living space. In summer, residents swim downstream after work, drifting from professional life back into personal time, a soft boundary between roles. Life in Bern does not revolve around major events. It revolves around repetition, familiar meal times, familiar routes, and stable community relationships. This prolonged sense of normality defines the capital's character. Bern does not need to impress daily. It exists through consistency, allowing people to live without being pulled into the rhythm of power. Within the Swiss journey, Bern reveals something rare, a capital where people do not shape their lives around power. Power quietly adapts to human life. From Bern's quiet stability, Switzerland's economy does not explode. It ticks. Like a mechanical watch, every movement is small, precise, and intentional. There are no leaps, only perfected repetition. Swiss watchmaking was never built for mass production. In fact, Switzerland produces less than 2% of global watch units, yet accounts for over 50% of total global watch export value. Value lives in detail, not volume. A high-end mechanical watch can contain over 100 moving components, operating within a space measured in centimeters. Error is not measured in minutes, but in fractions of a second. This obsession with precision extends beyond the product. It defines the economy. Switzerland's financial sector manages international assets worth trillions of US dollars, focused on wealth management, capital preservation, and long-term structures. The priority is not rapid profit, but endurance across economic cycles. In pharmaceuticals and life sciences, Switzerland ranks among Europe's leading exporters. This sector alone accounts for over 40% of total goods exports, showing that knowledge and research have become core resources. Precision manufacturing extends beyond watches, encompassing medical devices, high-tech machinery, and industrial components. These products are not mass-produced, but engineered to operate reliably in environments where error margins are minimal. Switzerland also functions as a hub for logistics and knowledge-based trade, hosting multinational headquarters not for production, but for coordination, research, and strategic decision-making. Neutrality and legal stability form key advantages. Despite a population of roughly 8.8 million, Switzerland maintains some of the world's highest productivity and value-added per capita. Small scale forces economic selectivity and efficiency. What unites these sectors is not the product, but the approach. Long-term investment, strict risk control, and prioritizing systems over individuals. Switzerland's economy, therefore, does not need noise to be noticed. It exists as a quiet structure, one that preserves value even as the surrounding world constantly shifts. As economic logic moves beyond systems and numbers, it begins to intersect with daily life. Space shifts westward, the land lowers, and open water appears. Lausanne forms at this boundary, where knowledge, education, and a younger rhythm directly extend the values shaped by the economy. Lausanne is built across layered slopes, with a clear elevation change between the lakeshore and the upper city. It does not sprawl, it stacks, forcing movement to slow and become deliberate. With a population of around 140,000, Lausanne maintains a controlled scale. It is not a center of power, but a city shaped by thought, education, and international sport. Lausanne has hosted the headquarters of the International Olympic Committee since 1915. giving it a unique global role not to compete or dominate, but to coordinate and regulate. Lausanne marks a transition in the journey. After Geneva, where power remains quiet, this city reveals how Switzerland sustains influence through organization, discipline, and shared standards rather than pressure. Lausanne cannot be understood from a single viewpoint. It demands movement from water to slope, from low ground to elevation, from openness to enclosure. Each shift in altitude introduces a different rhythm of life. As the route leaves the lakeshore, space tightens. Streets narrow, slopes steepen, and sightlines are broken by terrain. This fragmentation creates an inward-looking city, one shaped by structure, organization, and coordination. Lausanne does not attempt to overpower its terrain. It adapts to it. Residential areas, universities, and public spaces are positioned with restraint, avoiding excess, while maximizing function. The city reflects another layer of the Swiss mindset. Once power has been quieted in Geneva and political structure stabilized, knowledge and organization become the primary drivers. Lausanne operates through systemic precision, not pressure. On the map, Lausanne marks a crucial transition. It lifts the journey away from the water, preparing for the climb ahead. From this point on, the landscape is no longer flat, and Switzerland's story begins to be carved directly into the hillsides. Leaving Lausanne, the route continues along the northern shore of Lake Geneva. Instead of climbing higher, the land begins to tilt gently toward the water. Hills unfold in layers, and for the first time on this journey, human intervention becomes unmistakably visible. LAVAUX stretches for roughly 30 kilometers along the lakeshore, formed by thousands of stacked vineyard terraces. This is not wilderness. It is measured, segmented, and precisely controlled space. The terraces date back to the 11th century, largely constructed by monastic communities who transformed steep slopes into a system capable of lasting centuries. This is not expansive agriculture, it is disciplined cultivation. Covering approximately 800 hectares, LAVAUX uses every meter with intention. The lake reflects light, the slopes retain heat, and the mild climate forms a naturally optimized cycle. Designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2007, LAVAUX is recognized not merely for beauty, but for representing a lasting relationship between humans and terrain, a structure preserved, not replaced. LAVAUX reveals a distinct Swiss response to limitation. When horizontal expansion is impossible, organization turns vertical. Precision here is not found in machinery, but carved directly into the hillside. LAVAUX does not rely on variety. Across most terraces, the dominant grape is chasselas, a white variety that demands precision, responds sharply to climate, and exposes every cultivation mistake. Chasselas does not produce bold or overpowering flavors. Instead, it directly reflects terrain, soil, and light. As a result, the same grape yields subtly different expressions, from one terrace to another. Three natural forces govern viticulture here: sunlight reflected from the lake, heat retained by stone walls, and cool air descending from the Alps behind. Balance among these elements determines each harvest's outcome. Steep slopes make full mechanization nearly impossible. Much of the work, pruning, harvesting, stone maintenance, is done by hand. Yields remain limited, but control is nearly absolute. This approach mirrors a distinctly Swiss mindset, rejecting volume, refusing to force nature into speed. Instead, patience, repetition, and refinement define each season. LAVAUX therefore does more than produce wine. It preserves a philosophy of cultivation, where precision outweighs ambition, and value comes from doing things right, not doing more. At this point in the journey, the landscape changes not through height, but through feeling. The ordered vineyard slopes fade, and the map pulls inward. Space tightens, lines sharpen, and everything gains weight. GRUYÈRES appears as a compression, a village preserved in form for centuries. Sitting at roughly 810 meters above sea level, it does not attempt to expand or adapt to modern tempo. It remains still, deliberately. The village structure remains nearly unchanged. A single main axis leads directly to the castle, with controlled side streets branching outward. This is not historical accident, but a long-term decision. Limit scale to preserve order. With a population of around 2,000, GRUYÈRES never feels diminished. Instead, its scale enables a slow, inward, and manageable rhythm where change happens selectively. The village is inseparable from Gruyère cheese, protected by strict controls on milk origin, production zone, and aging period. There is no room for mass production. Each wheel is the result of precise repetition across generations. The Château de Gruyères, dating back to the 13th century, was never meant to project force. It served as a vantage point monitoring space and maintaining order, reflecting Switzerland's tradition of passive defense. In Gruyères, precision no longer exists as national policy or institutional structure. It becomes habit. Architecture, production, and daily life are all held at exactly the right scale. No more, no less. After the controlled spaces of lower regions, the Jungfrau region introduces a different reality. Here, the landscape does not serve humans. It sets limits and forces adaptation. Located in the Bernese Alps, the region is dominated by high peaks and glaciers. Jungfrau itself rises to 4,158 meters, placing humans in an environment ruled by weather, terrain, and altitude. The Jungfrau region has been part of a UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site since 2001, protected as one of Europe's most intact mountain glacier systems. The ALETSCH glacier, stretching roughly 23 kilometers, is the largest glacier in the Alps. It moves slowly, yet relentlessly, reshaping terrain on geological timescales, indifferent to human presence. In the Jungfrau region, comfort fades. Space expands vertically rather than horizontally. All human structures appear small, and precision is no longer optional. It becomes a condition for survival. On the sheer rock faces of Jungfrau, the Alpine IBEX moves as if gravity barely applies. Heavy-bodied, crowned with massive curved horns, yet each step is placed with almost no wasted motion. IBEX spend daylight hours climbing high rock faces where predators struggle to reach. They pause for minutes on ledges barely wide enough for a single hoof. A small slip here is not a mistake. It is an ending. The IBEX's hooves are uniquely structured. A hard outer edge for support, a softer inner pad for grip. When moving, they do not rush. They test the rock, shift weight, then commit to the next step. In early mornings and late afternoons, IBEX descends slightly to feed on grass, moss, and alpine plants. They eat quickly, constantly alert, lifting their heads between bites. There is no moment of carelessness. In winter, when snow buries vegetation, IBEX reduce movement, conserve energy, and remain close to sun-facing rock walls. They do not fight harsh conditions. They adjust their rhythm to them. During the breeding season, males clash head-on, horns colliding with sharp echoes across the mountains. Yet fights are brief. Victory is not determined by raw force, but by who maintains balance after impact. The Alpine IBEX does not dominate terrain. It reads it. Every movement is a reflex refined through generations spent at the edge of error. In the vertical world of the Alps, the IBEX survives not through overpowering strength, but through repeated precision one step at a time. Nothing more, nothing less. After the world of rock and ice, humans reappear, but not in familiar ways. In Wengen, human presence does not soften the landscape. It exists only in the spaces the mountains allow. Wengen sits at roughly 1,274 meters, clinging to the mountainside above the Lauterbrunnen Valley. The village does not expand outward. It hangs between elevation and emptiness. It is one of the few Swiss villages completely car-free. Movement relies on rail, footpaths, and enforced slowness. Modern convenience stops at the edge of terrain. With a permanent population of around 1,300, Wengen swells dramatically in winter. The village operates on two rhythms, one for residents, another for those who arrive temporarily. Buildings here are not designed to impress. They are low, compact, and angled into the slope to resist wind, retain heat, and bear snow. Architecture is not aesthetic. First, it is survival-driven. In Wengen, time is not measured by calendars, but by seasons. Winter stretches long and enforces slowness, forcing all activity to become compact and precise. When snow deepens, the village does not resist. It accepts. Narrow paths are cleared section by section. Homes seal themselves tighter, and every movement is planned in advance. There is no room for spontaneity. A rushed decision can stall an entire day. Life here requires reading weather the way others read schedules. Low clouds signal strong winds. Shifting light warns of incoming snow. Small signs become essential information. Summer does not make Wengen forgiving. Terrain remains steep, distances remain long, and everything still operates within limits. The only change is that space breathes a little easier. This seasonal repetition shapes Wengen's character. There are no rapid leaps of development, no sudden expansion. Everything advances slowly, steadily, and predictably. From Wengen, space does not expand. It shifts sideways. The altitude remains. The air stays the same, but the rhythm turns in a different direction. If Wengen is where people pause to look into the valley, MURREN is where they step fully to the edge of the landscape. There is no longer a sense of centrality or easy connection. Everything becomes more isolated, quieter, and deliberate. MURREN appears not as the next stop, but as a decision. MURREN is not a village shaped by convenience. It exists where expansion is always difficult, and that difficulty has shaped how people choose to live here. Perched on the edge of a cliff, MURREN does not claim the landscape, it limits itself to avoid disrupting it. There are no cars, no constant traffic, and no pressure to move quickly. The quiet here is not the absence of people, but the control of rhythm. People are present, but they move slowly, speak softly, and allow space to guide behavior. MURREN's architecture reflects this philosophy. Low wooden chalets with thick walls and steep roofs are not designed to impress visually. They are built to withstand wind, snow, and long stretches of time. MURREN does not expand according to tourism demand. When space becomes tight, the village does not build outward. It accepts limitation. Decisions are not based on possibility, but on long-term consequence. This choice creates a distinctly different feeling. MURREN does not cling to the past, nor chase the present. It exists in a balance, where change happens slowly, preserving a structure that already works. Compared to WENGEN, MURREN is more isolated and less connected. Yet that isolation clarifies every decision: to stay, to accept limits, and to live with the terrain, rather than overcome it. Within the Swiss journey, MURREN does not represent performance or conquest. It represents a quiet choice that sometimes the most sustainable act is not moving further, but knowing when to stop. If MURREN forces contraction, INTERLAKEN allows expansion. Space opens, lines soften, and life accelerates naturally. Here, the landscape does not press down, it guides. INTERLAKEN sits between two major lakes, Lake Thun and Lake Brienz, forming a rare aquatic corridor within the Alps. Space no longer rises vertically alone, but stretches along water and valley lines. With a population of around 6,000, INTERLAKEN functions as the connective hub of the Bernese Oberland. This is not a place to retreat, but to link. Rare flat terrain allows infrastructure to expand more clearly. Railways, boat piers, open plazas. Movement becomes intentional again, no longer dictated step by terrain. INTERLAKEN has long served as the gateway to the Alps, not because it is the most overwhelming landscape, but because it enables movement upward to peaks, outward across lakes, or deeper into valleys. Life in INTERLAKEN is no longer compressed by altitude. Movement increases, pauses shorten, and outdoor activity becomes a natural extension of daily life. Water moderates space. Lakes absorb light, reflect sky, and soften the severity of surrounding mountains. This is where the Alps first allow balance. INTERLAKEN does not demand extreme adaptation. It allows experimentation, faster movement, and planned changes based on conditions. Flexibility returns as a privilege. This flexibility makes INTERLAKEN a critical transition zone. It connects the disciplined world of high mountains with the openness of lower regions, without losing alpine identity. In the journey, INTERLAKEN is not an endpoint. It is a breathing space where rhythm is regained before entering landscapes that are more iconic, higher, and harsher still. On the lower alpine slopes around Interlaken, where forest blends into rock and seasonal meadows open wide, the European chamois emerges as a clear contrast to the IBEX. Where the IBEX survives through precision, the chamois survives through speed and reflex. Chamois move in small groups, most active in early morning or late afternoon. They feed quickly, remain highly alert, and rarely stay still for long. Every movement is temporary. When sensing danger, chamois do not climb sheer cliffs like IBEX. Instead, they sprint diagonally across slopes, using open terrain to gain speed. Long, decisive leaps allow them to vanish within seconds. The chamois body is built for constant motion light, compact, with long, agile legs. It can change direction abruptly across rock, grass, and forest without losing momentum. In winter, chamois descend to lower elevations to avoid deep snow and find food. In summer, they return to higher slopes where wide visibility allows early threat detection. Chamois possess sharp vision and hearing, allowing them to detect subtle movement from a distance. When danger is sensed, they do not flee instantly. They freeze, briefly, observe, orient, then react. Females often lead groups, especially during breeding season and when young are present. They select safer routes, avoiding overly exposed slopes where speed alone is not enough. Young chamois learn early by mimicking the herd. Their first jumps are awkward, but within weeks they keep pace with the constant motion of the slopes. When navigating complex terrain, chamois rarely move straight. They zigzag across layers, using rocks, grassy ledges, and slope angles to maintain advantage. In the alpine world, chamois do not survive through strength or control. They survive by being in the right place, at the right moment, and leaving before conditions turn against them. Interlaken is where movement converges water from the mountains. People from multiple directions, journeys constantly beginning and ending. But leaving Interlaken, the journey no longer follows that flow. It turns towards something else, where what matters is not convergence, but endurance through time. Signs of daily life gradually thin out, and the landscape adopts a different rhythm, slower, heavier, and far less changeable. This is where space stops telling a human story and gives way to something that existed long before humans arrived. Within this shift, Aletsch begins to appear not as a destination, but as a mass of time resting among the mountains. Aletsch is not a landscape meant to be passed quickly. It is a mass of time resting within the Alps, where movement is so slow it becomes nearly invisible. Standing before Aletsch, one does not face beauty, but duration. The glacier stretches 23 kilometers, winding through mountains and valleys like a trace of accumulated millennia. There is no dramatic moment here, only continuous persistence, layer upon layer of ice. Aletsch does not stand alone. It anchors a vast ice system covering 80 square kilometers, where temperature, slope, and light collectively determine the glacier's survival rate. Each year, the ice moves only a few meters slow enough to escape human notice. yet steady enough to force surrounding landscapes to adapt. The glacier does not disrupt space. It shapes it over long time. Within ALETSCH lies an immense ice volume of roughly 10 cubic kilometers, storing climate memory from the past. Each layer marks a moment, recording changes humans have only begun to perceive. In front of ALETSCH, concepts of speed lose relevance. Time here is not measured in days or years, but in accumulation and retreat across generations. This silence and slowness make ALETSCH essential to the Swiss journey, not as a symbol to conquer, but as a reminder that some things exist only when left unhurried. If the Matterhorn represents the shape of challenge, ALETSCH is the structure of time, an existence that does not demand attention, yet remains constant, enduring, and non-negotiable. The landscape shifts abruptly, not through height, but through form. The extended alpine ranges recede, and space contracts around a single mass. All other lines become secondary. The Matterhorn appears not as a continuation of the Alps, but as an exception. It does not blend into surrounding terrain, nor does it share the softened rhythm of nearby slopes. It stands apart, sharp and absolute. Rising to 4,478 meters, the Matterhorn is not Switzerland's tallest peak. Yet its near-perfect pyramidal form turns all other elements into background. Here, shape outweighs statistics. 4 steep faces point toward different directions, forming a rare natural symmetry. None are gentle, none offer easy access. Each side presents a distinct challenge. The Matterhorn is composed primarily of gneiss hard, sharp, and resilient. Over millions of years, ice and wind eroded surrounding landscapes. Yet the mountain's overall form remains intact. It was not worn down, it was sharpened. This isolation creates its visual weight. The Matterhorn does not require context to impress. It generates its own spatial dominance, forcing attention inward. In mountaineering history, the Matterhorn holds significance beyond geography. It was among the last major alpine peaks to be climbed. And the first ascent in 1965 ended in tragedy, leaving a lasting mark on high-altitude exploration. From that moment onward, the Matterhorn became more than a mountain. It became a symbol of limits, where human ambition meets a form that does not negotiate easily. Unlike mountain ranges that allow entry and passage, the Matterhorn maintains distance. It does not invite. It challenges, and that is precisely why it is remembered. Within the Swiss journey, the Matterhorn marks a clear turning point. The Alps are no longer experienced as a system of terrain, but as a single symbol, isolated, precise, and irreplaceable. This is where nature does not need motion to impress. It only needs to exist. Zermatt is not like other alpine villages. It does not exist because of fertile land, trade routes, or geography. Zermatt exists because of one mountain. The entire structure of the town revolves around the Matterhorn, from building orientation and visitor flow to how the economy functions. Here, the mountain is not background. It is the center. Zermatt sits at roughly 1,620 meters, confined within a narrow valley that does not allow free expansion. As the town grew, it could not spread outward, only adapt inward. Being car-free is not a romantic choice. It is a direct consequence of spatial limitation and the need to preserve the visual identity tied to the Matterhorn. Everything here must remain quiet for the symbol above. With a permanent population of around 5,800, Zermatt serves many times that number annually. The town does not survive on local life. It survives by maintaining the Matterhorn's image in the global imagination. This creates a clear tension. Zermatt depends on visitors, yet cannot allow the town to become loud, coarse, or dominant. Every form of development must stop at the edge of the symbol. Architecture, services, and daily rhythm in Zermatt are therefore designed for one purpose: allowing humans to approach the Matterhorn without overshadowing it. Zermatt is not where humans conquer the Alps. It is where humans learn to exist because of an irreplaceable form and accept that they will always come second. After Zermatt, where the landscape is locked beneath a single symbol, space finally opens again. ENGADIN does not force the eye to stop. It allows vision to drift along the valley, with the light and through time. ENGADIN is a long, high valley, but not vertical. The terrain stretches horizontally, creating a sense of openness and breadth rarely found in the Alps. Space does not dominate, it contains. Light in ENGADIN is distinctly different. A dry climate and high sunshine hours sharpen the landscape, stretching shadows and defining contours. Everything feels slower here, but never dull. The valley is shaped by the Inn River and a chain of long, calm lakes. There is no longer the feeling of being blocked by cliffs. Water and land move in the same direction, creating a steady, predictable rhythm. ENGADIN is not a valley of density. Population here is sparse, scattered into small communities that leave most of the space to land, water, and wind, moving on their own terms. Humans are present, but they do not dominate. The region stretches across small towns and open plateaus, forming one of the Alps' most continuous living landscapes. This horizontal scale forces life to slow down, with activity measured by seasons rather than days. ENGADIN is also among the regions with the highest number of sunshine hours in Switzerland, producing a dry climate, sharp light, and clear air. Light here does more than illuminate. It shapes how daily life is organized. Winter lasts long here, but not in a suffocating way. Snow spreads wide and evenly, allowing large ecosystems to function steadily rather than being fractured by sudden extremes. ENGADIN lies within a major protected region, with over 1,700 square kilometers under conservation, where human intervention is tightly restricted. This allows biological cycles to unfold close to their natural state. Because of its spatial scale and limited intervention, ENGADIN becomes an ideal ground for large animals to move seasonally. Space here is not just observed, it is used. Within the journey, ENGADIN does not impress through a single moment. It convinces through continuity, offering enough space for life to repeat, adjust, and endure over long periods. In Engadin's open terrain, the first animal to truly read the entire valley is not a flyer, but the red deer. They do not dominate a point, they use space itself. Red deer live in large herds, moving constantly between forests, meadows, and mountain slopes. They do not stay still. Every decision is tied to light, food, and temperature. In summer, herds move upward, taking advantage of open pastures and extended daylight. As winter arrives, they descend to lower areas where snow is thinner and food more accessible. This cycle repeats annually, with little variation. An adult red deer can weigh up to 200 kilograms, carrying large antlers that are shed and regrown each year. This cycle is not merely biological, it functions as a seasonal clock for the herd. The mating season occurs in autumn, when males release deep, echoing roars to establish dominance. These calls are not immediate challenges, but assessments measuring rivals before conflict begins. Red deer can travel dozens of kilometers within a single season. Not in straight lines, but along inherited routes. Pathways remembered and reused across generations. Engadin provides what red deer need most: space large enough to move without fragmentation. When space is broken, the cycle collapses. Here, it still runs intact. In Engadin's story, red deer are not brief visual highlights. They are the underlying rhythm-quiet movement that keeps the ecosystem breathing. After the long seasonal movements of red deer, GUARDA appears not as a place of control, but of adaptation. The village does not claim space. It settles into the slope, accepting rhythms that existed long before humans arrived. GUARDA is small, secluded, and distant from major transit routes. This isolation is not neglect, it is a choice. Close enough to survive, far enough not to interrupt surrounding cycles. The village's architecture reflects this compromise. Buildings are low, walls thick, windows small, oriented to deflect wind and retain heat. Every detail serves a single purpose: to last through winter. GUARDA does not exist as a village meant to be admired, but as a space organized to endure time. Many houses here have stood for over 3 centuries, not through ornament, but through structure and materials chosen to resist prolonged cold, wind, and snow. The tradition of sgraffito facade decoration is not about artistic display, but about marking family identity, seasonal cycles, and collective memory. These walls are not frequently renewed. They are preserved as living history. From GUARDA, the journey leaves the quiet slopes and moves southward along the Engadin Valley. A gentle descent pulls the landscape downward. Light remains unchanged, but human presence grows denser. Life no longer turns inward. It begins to face outward. MORITZ was not born from the need to survive. It emerged when the Engadin Valley chose to step into the light. Space remains wide, air stays dry and clear, but purpose shifts. Here, landscape is no longer endured, it is organized. Frozen lakes become stages, mountain slopes turn into courses, and winter light is treated as a resource. Moritz is among the very few places to have hosted 2 Winter Olympic Games, not due to harshness, but due to control over it. Moritz does not merely organize landscape, it organizes time. Winter here does not begin with snowfall, but when systems are ready. Events, infrastructure, and services are planned years ahead, so experiences can be precisely repeated. The frozen lake becomes a multi-use surface, having hosted ice-based competitions for over 100 years. Natural space is transformed into a platform requiring extreme reliability. Tourism in Moritz operates on a high-quality, low-volume model. A significant share of revenue comes from premium winter tourism, where spending per visitor far exceeds the national average. This model allows the town to maintain lean yet efficient infrastructure. Rather than expanding aggressively, Moritz focuses on reliability, punctual transport, precise services, and consistent experience season after season. Stable light and weather conditions enable detailed planning of outdoor activities. This reduces risk and increases predictability, a key factor in turning nature into a marketable experience. In Moritz, luxury does not come from scale or volume, but from making everything work exactly as promised. It is the luxury of consistency. Here, ENGADIN reveals its opposite pole. The same space, the same climate, but a completely different way of life, built on control rather than restraint. As the journey leaves ENGADIN and continues south, space begins to change noticeably. Mountains recede, light grows warmer, and water is no longer locked in ice. Lugano appears as a point of transition where Switzerland allows itself to loosen. Lugano sits beside its namesake lake, where water remains a constant part of daily life. The city neither turns away from nature nor attempts to control it. Water, light, and streets coexist in an open rhythm. The climate here is distinctly different from the rest of the country. Lugano experiences average summer temperatures of around 25 degrees Celsius, allowing palm trees to grow, outdoor life to extend, and daily routines to move outward. Culturally and linguistically, Lugano belongs to Switzerland's Italian-speaking region. Around 90% of residents use Italian in daily life, giving the city a Mediterranean tone rather than a Central European one. Despite its softer rhythm, Lugano maintains a clear economic structure. The city functions as a regional financial hub, hosting over 100 financial institutions, linking Switzerland to Italian and Southern European markets. In Lugano, the boundary between city and nature nearly dissolves. The lake does not sit outside the center. It weaves into daily rhythm, appearing in slow walks, small cafes by the water, and pauses without purpose. People here do not rush to escape the landscape, nor try to dominate it. They live beside water, let light dictate the day's tempo, and accept subtle weather shifts as part of life. The Mediterranean rhythm does not erase Swiss identity. It reveals another capability. When pressure eases, precision remains, but becomes more comfortable, more flexible. Lugano is not a contradiction to the rest of the country, but a necessary extension. It shows that order does not have to be rigid, and discipline can coexist with ease. After enclosed mountains, open valleys, and tightly controlled spaces, Lugano offers decompression. not to forget the journey, but to reflect on it with a slower breath. After completing the journey, what remains is not a specific place, but a recurring feeling, the sense that everything is operating where it belongs. In Switzerland, space is never forced to impress. Mountains do not need to become more dramatic. Cities do not need to grow louder. People do not need to appear more frequently to prove their presence. Each region revealed a different way of living, yet none broke the underlying rhythm. Differences do not collide. They stand side by side, coexisting. What makes Switzerland different is not perfection, but the absence of neglect. Every element, nature, people, systems, is held within its limits. Here, time is never rushed. It moves slowly enough to allow correction, steadily enough to repeat, and long enough to build trust. Perhaps Switzerland is not different because of what it has, but because of what it does not need to do. It does not need to show off. It does not need to expand at any cost. It does not need to speak loudly to be heard. As the journey comes to an end, Switzerland does not leave in the usual way. It does not offer a final overwhelming image, but a feeling that things can function better when placed where they belong. Not every place needs to become bigger, faster, or louder to survive. Switzerland reminds us that another path exists, one of consistency, of rhythm maintained over time. If this journey made you pause longer on a frame, think deeper about a rhythm of life, or reconsider how a nation chooses to exist, then Switzerland has done what it does best. And if you wish to continue exploring other lands and stories, leave a like and subscribe to support this journey. Share your thoughts in the comments. What stayed with you most about Switzerland? And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next episodes, where countries are not only seen, but felt. See you in the next journey.